How can I learn to pray?
Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. I am excited about what we're talking about today and making sure that our goal is through this process to make sure that some of those foundations of our faith that God may be calling us back to, that as we look at those, as we examine them, if there are cracks there, that we have an opportunity to really get those things fixed. And one of the core foundational parts of our faith is praying. And so today I've got a guest with us that I am so stoked about. Pastor Paul Richardson is the pastor of the Assemblies of God in Licking, Missouri. And obviously someone that I respect greatly. He has led that church with just a pastor's heart. And pastors understand what I mean by that, has led through tremendous change and has done it in such a way that it puts me in awe. And so I'm thankful for Paul taking the time today to join us. So thank you, sir, for taking time out of what is, I'm sure, a busy schedule in order to speak to our congregation today.
My privilege. Thanks, Alan, for having me.
And we are going to talk real quick about prayer. And so we just really want to look at especially for somebody who maybe has never spent time in prayer before, maybe has never really applied themselves to prayer. Maybe every now and then they fire off a prayer to God. If God were calling us to something right now and really interceding and really praying, but somebody who's never done that before, we really want to help them through that. So if there was somebody who had really never spent time in praying before, where would they start?
Well, I would start with expectations first, because many of us have heard about prayer. Maybe we've seen it, maybe grandma prayed. And so I would start with expectations. And just a few things to remember is don't start out trying to pray for an hour a day, because that's going to set you up for failure. You're going to miss an hour and you're not going to be able to do it. And it's going to be hard. And then you're going to become discouraged. And then when you're discouraged, you're going to walk away. So start with expectations. Don't start trying to pray for an hour or 2 hours a day. Find something that's manageable for you, that is just enough of a stretch goal that it's not easy necessarily, but it's not impossible to do. So if you're not praying at all, 4 minutes. Why? 4 minutes is a random number, but you can handle it. I know nowadays there's this new thing called Quibi, whatever that is. I've seen the commercials lately, and it's like taking these shows and condensing them down to 10 minutes. Maybe, and I'm gonna make a new phrase here. Maybe we're gonna pray a Quibi. Take 10 minutes. We've got 10 minutes. So start with expectations. Don't set yourself up for failure. It's important for us to start where you are, not where you think you should be. If you're new to all of this, maybe you've been doing this for a little while. Don't start with an hour. Don't start trying to sound someone who's King James with a big booming voice. Start where you are, not where you think you should be. And talking about expectations, be yourself, not someone else when you're trying to pray. God's not asking for others to pray on your behalf. They're asking for you to pray on your behalf. So start where you are, set reasonable expectations and goals that just challenge you enough, but they don't set you up for failure. Be yourself, not someone else. Don't try to be Pastor Allen when you're trying to pray. Be yourself. So some other measurable goals: find a specific time and a specific place and try to keep it there. Anytime you're trying to learn something new, any discipline. I'm a music guy, so I've learned a few instruments. If you're learning languages, you need to have a consistent routine that you always go to that place and that time, and that's where you do that discipline. Well, do that with prayer. Maybe it's in your car on your way to work. Maybe it's in the morning before the kids get up. Maybe it's at night. Maybe, your spouse goes to bed earlier than you do. So you have like this 15 or 20 minute gap. Use those opportunities and just be very consistent in finding a specific time and a specific place that is perfect for you, not somebody else, but it's perfect for you to pray. And so I think those are some of the places that we really need to begin. And then one more thing on this is, if you're wondering, where do I start? Jesus taught his disciples using this thing we call the Lord's Prayer. Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. There's nothing wrong with starting right there. I mean, for real, that's your first 45 seconds of prayer. And then once you kind of get the mouth going and the mind going, you've prayed that. And then at the end, okay, Lord, now what do I pray after I've just prayed the Lord's Prayer? Well, Lord, would you help my family? Would you help me? I'm a little scared right now. Would you be with, and just use that as a way to get things flowing. Think of it like a flywheel effect. The hardest part of getting a flywheel going is getting it started. But once it's started, things begin to roll a bit more smoothly. So the Lord's Prayer, the Lord gave it to us for a reason, and he expects us to use it. So that's where I would start. Lord's Prayer, something specific, something that's challenging but not too hard. Just begin right where you're at. Believe me, the Lord's not going to reject you there.
Wow, good stuff. I love the broad approach of recognizing that we can set up expectations of what it's supposed to be like, and we think that we're going to just immediately fall on our knees and be weeping in prayer, and that's not where a lot of us start, but we think we should be somewhere, and so we try to jump right to there. But that's good. And then on the flip side of it, the really specific of place, of consistent time, routine, all of that. So good. Man, fantastic. So on let's just say shooting from the hip, or what you think a specific or a prayer life should look like. What do you think a prayer life should look like for a believer?
Sure. So I think a prayer life should look like a life. Okay. Now I know that's not profound, but it is profound. It should look like a life. So it should be meaningful. Our lives should have meaning, right? Well, our prayer lives should have meaning. It should be important. Well, we want our lives to have importance. So shouldn't our prayer life, the life, the action, the energy that it takes on, should have importance? Our prayer lives should hurt when we don't pray. We're going to have days where we miss it. Man, Pastor Allen, we have days where we're just like, oh man, I didn't get it done. And what happens? It hurts, right? Well, that's why, because something meaningful is missing. Right now, a lot of us are missing relationships. We're missing having coffee with someone, or going out for lunch, or game nights with friends. And it hurts, right? Why? Because something meaningful is missing. Our prayer lives should be similar. Our prayer lives, what should it look like? Well, it should look like you and sound like you, not somebody else. But it should look like you. It should sound like you. It should be your personality, your fears, your failures, your hopes, and your dreams, all wrapped up in this one thing that we call life, right? What else should it look like? It should happen anywhere and anytime. The Apostle Paul says, pray without ceasing. Well, so what does that mean? It means that some moments you'll be on your knees at the side of the bed praying, and those are awesome. It also means that there's moments where you're washing dishes, and you're going through this daily ritual, this daily rhythm, and your mind is free. And so you're praying. You're praying while you're mowing the yard, or walking the dog, or whatever the case may be. So what should it look like? Life happens everywhere we are, right? Well, it should happen anywhere and at any time. So the opposite of that is, what should it not look like? Just super quick. It shouldn't look fake, okay? Don't be someone that you're not. I'm not sure what your particular background is, but, I kind of come from a small town, old school atmosphere. And you always had these people who prayed, "Blessed God, who art thou high." I mean, they didn't sound like themselves, but when they prayed, it was this like Victorian English. And I'm like, man, that's what I want to sound like. No, because that's not who I am. All right. And so your prayer life should not look fake. It shouldn't be showy. Jesus had a lot to say about showy prayers, and none of them were good. And so it should be showy. And then in this day and time, we're not out praying on the street corners like the Pharisees were, but we are kind of showy on Facebook or TikTok, whatever that is, and all that kind of stuff. So we have a lot of that going on. If the only prayers you have are on Facebook or on TikTok, you're really missing it. Just like for pastors like Alan and I, if the only time we pray is on platform with a microphone at church on Sundays, we're missing it. If the only thing you're doing is sending these messages that nobody's reading, okay? Look me in the eyes. Nobody are reading these on Facebook Messenger, okay? But if that's the only time you're sending out prayers, that's not what God's calling you to either. See, the best prayer lives are going to be these things. They're going to be authentic, genuine, and they're going to be consistent. Just like any relationship that you have, the best relationships are authentic, genuine, and consistent. Our relationship with God need to be authentic, genuine, and consistent as well. Believe me, if we get those things right, man, it's gonna be amazing.
Yeah, Yeah. Do you mind if I tie into that and just kind of ask a question that I think dovetails off of what you were just talking about, authentic?
Yeah, go for it.
But also not making sure it's not fake. One of the things that I've kind of even just been wrestling through myself is when Jesus says you need to go into a room and pray, right? Make sure that it's done in secret. How do you interpret that? Like what should that look like in relation to our prayer? Is it just in relation to making sure we're not Facebook and just TikToking our prayers, or is there something more to it? What would you kind of speak to on that?
I really think Jesus is speaking to the power and the private nature of prayer, especially in that particular setting. Where is your prayers going to be the most powerful? They're probably going to be the most powerful in those private moments that nobody knows about. It's in those discipline moments. So for example, I have played piano since I was in first grade. And so many people, especially adults, when we're learning instruments, we want to learn how to play maybe a Moonlight Sonata or a Beethoven or a Mozart, and we want to just learn the song. Well, I have many times sat down at church while preaching, and I said, all of you want to be able to play this, play something that's pretty. But what you don't realize is that there's hundreds of hours of me playing single scales that are not fun, they're boring. But it's those building blocks that make me be able to sit behind a piano and play something that's pretty. Same way with our prayer. We so often want to have this great platform online these days, or maybe at church writing books, and we want those to be the goal. But Jesus is saying that's not the goal. Jesus is saying the goal is to be, in a prayer closet where nobody can see you, nobody can hear you, but it's just me and you, God's saying, and that's where the power is going to originate from. If you can be powerful there, dude, you can be powerful anywhere. But if you can't do it at home in private, man, you're never going to be able to play something in public. Same way with if you're a sports fan, those guys who are making amazing plays back when we were actually having sports online, they're making amazing plays. But what you don't see is the thousands and thousands and thousands of free throws or the grounders that were picked up or whatever else. It's those private moments that lead to powerful moments later on.
Oh man, so good. So good. I'm like scribbling notes like crazy over here. Man, this is like gold. I could just mine here for a while. I don't want to take too much of your time though. I would just one final question to just kind of throw out to you. How would you encourage people to pray right now? Like if you would, you could kind of leave them with one final encouragement for how to pray in this moment with all the uniquenesses of this moment.
Yeah. So in order to embrace the uniqueness, I want to introduce your people to a phrase that they may not be aware of. And I want you to be led by the Spirit. And what I mean by that is that we believe that the Spirit of God is living and active, and he can speak to us, although it's not usually audibly. He's able to lead us to pray for specific people and specific times and things in certain ways that just really get incredible God results. And so right now, since, like work is slowed down and we're not watching baseball right now, and everything is kind of changing, some of the clutter is kind of slowed down, thankfully. And what your people may be finding is that all of a sudden you're thinking about someone you haven't thought of. For myself, I've been waking up at weird times. I'm not an early morning like Pastor Allen, but I will wake up at like 4 or 5, which is not a good hour. But I'll wake up and I'm like, why am I awake right now? And so I'll begin to pray for people as they come to mind. And simply what I'm doing is I think I'm being led by the Spirit of God to pray for Pastor Allen in that moment, or to pray for something specifically that I wasn't thinking about. I'm not seeing it on Facebook, but the Lord's saying, hey, I want you to pray for someone. So, in these moments, what should we be doing? Well, we always should be praying for people we love, be praying for the Lord to help us with our finances and to be good stewards. Pray for anything that you are afraid of or anything that brings you anxiety. And this is not usually a one and done kind of prayer. These are prayers that you pray every time you experience this anxiety. So right now, if you're worried about, am I going to get sick? Well, every time you're worried about it, just bring that to the Lord in prayer. Don't be fake. Don't be weird. Just please don't be weird. Just like, Lord, man, this makes me nervous. So would you just help me right now? Help me have peace, help me have joy, help me have whatever I need. I don't know. Would you help me? So pray for people you love, Pray for your bosses, pray for your pastors, pray for your leaders. They've never been here before. We all need that. Please know that nothing is too big or too trivial to pray for. God is attentive to all of those things. The Psalms talks about God who inclines his ear to us. That's a phrase we don't use very often. We all know what reclining is. Reclining is what we do in our chairs when we put ourselves back, okay? We're kind of relaxed in those points. We're just kind of absorbing whatever's on TV maybe. But when we incline, we come into this. And right now, God is not reclining, hanging back, thinking, I can't wait for this to be over. In fact, he's inclining. He's leaning in to listen to your prayers, to know your heart, to know your fears and your dreams. And he knows how all of those things are related and connected. So right now is an incredible time to not only allow God to lean into us, but for us to lean into God and say, God, help me to be led by the Spirit, whatever that means. And he wants to lead you. He's going to lead you into success in prayer, not into failure in prayer. And so this is probably one of the greatest times we have had in recent memory to hit reset on our life. Now's the best time to put some disciplines into practice. I know personally, I'm working on some personal disciplines because I don't have any excuses anymore, so let me get up earlier, let me spend more time in prayer. Let me learn this Greek that I'm trying to learn for college. Let me just be a better believer, a better follower, a better husband, and to be a better person with Jesus. So, man, what a great time to be led by the Spirit of God. And so just be listening, be paying attention. If the Lord drops something in your heart and it makes you a little nervous, that's probably a God thing. So pray about it. Maybe giving someone a call or a quick text. Those are all things we can do. And maybe right now you're just thankful. That's also a form of prayer. You're thankful that you're an essential worker, so you're getting a paycheck. You're thankful for the slowdown. You're thankful you don't have to go to the 500th ball game this week. And just be thankful. The Lord is leading you, speaking to us, and he wants to lead all of us into a closer relationship with him, especially during this time.
Amen. I love that word you used when you're talking about him inclining his ear towards us. Scripture, of course, talks about our hearts then also being inclined towards him, leaning in towards him. And I do believe, I believe that God is using this time in all of our lives to hopefully incline us more towards him, to have hearts after him, to lean in towards him in prayer and studying the word and growing in him. Absolutely. So good. Well, Pastor Paul, I'm just so thankful for your time today. Again, I know you have plenty of things to do, and the fact that you took time out for people that you've maybe never even met in order to just speak into their lives. Man, I'm just so thankful. So thank you for your time, sir. I appreciate it.
Hey, my privilege, and to praise. Keep up the good work, guys. I'm seeing great things that are happening in your communities, and I'm thankful that Springfield has a church like yours with people like you doing what God has called you to do. It's a great thing. Keep it up.